where it's out of your hand. Out of your hands. Because you're not a part of the evaluation process. How many people have sat on a source selection evaluation board? Okay. 2, 3, sure. Okay. Do you know about the source selection evaluation board? What takes place in there? Not theoretical, but for real. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I've sat on it. Okay? Source selection evaluation board. They establish the evaluation criteria of that proposal that is coming in, and if it's made up as a part of the evaluation criteria, technical, cost, and schedule, they have levels of excellence for each of those areas. Outstanding, marginal, unacceptable, if you will, for each of those areas. Because at the end of the day, the source selection evaluation board has to make a decision as to who won. Okay? And unless you have some kind of measurable criteria by which you can evaluate those proposals, okay, you're going to get protests. You're going to get protests in any case, if you will. But if you have a rational basis for making decisions as you review these proposals, and you put them in certain stacks, if you will, 20 proposals is where I start. My first cut, this group had outstanding in technical, outstanding in management, outstanding in cost, if you will. The next group, a lower level. Eventually I have a group here that's unacceptable just by a numerical evaluation. So I take that group and I set it over here and say, now I only have 15 to look at. And I continue that process until I have a stack of the 3 top proposals based upon the criteria that was established. Okay? And that's when the haggling starts, because they all look good. Okay? And we do the best we can to be objective with those last 3. But somewhere in that process, you get individual preferences, if you will, because we're people. You know, if I've gone through the classical process and I end up with 3 on there as the 3 best, and I have to make a decision, I'm still going to try to be objective. But the fact that there's some political connectivity with one of those 3, how do you eradicate that? Because we're people. There are people evaluating these things. So what I'm saying is that you put forth your best effort to satisfy all of the requirements. And your answer may be 95%, but there's a 5% bit that's uncertainty that's attached to political acceptability. Facts. Okay. And if you ask anyone else, they'd probably tell you that no, it's all a deterministic process, if you will. But at the end of the day, the evaluators are people, and you can't take that human side out of it. Okay. But you can control I would say 90 to 95% of that evaluation process by carefully satisfying the requirements of the RFP, Section L and Section M, knowing where the customer places their emphasis as to what is important to them, to carefully decompose the RFP, carefully decompose it, and have a system in place where you can ask yourself, how do I know when I'm finished? How do I know when I have satisfied all of the terms and conditions that's required in this RFP? How do I know it? Because as I said before, if you don't comply, you're out. Okay. This is about doing business with the government. These are the rules that were there when you got there. And since you're here, we aren't going to change them. You are in a competitive environment. I'll basically say there are no sure things, but I think you increase the probability, note I said, you increase the probability of being successful in winning business when you follow certain processes and procedures. Okay. Collaboration. Can't emphasize that enough. In this environment, you would like to specialize, many will. I think that you have to look at opportunities where you can collaborate, teammates, leverage skill sets. That's going to be required to stay in business. Remember this. At the time that you win a contract, from that moment, you start losing it. Okay. Each day, it's going to an end. If you don't have some water that's going to put in the bucket, if you will, you're going to run out. So, in business, you have relegated yourself to a lifetime of trying to keep the bucket going, if you will. Okay? And I found it, by the way, exciting. It keeps me young. Yes. The other part that keeps me young are the people that I see here. Being able to share some lessons learned. Attempt to give you the real story, if you will. To tell you the importance of relationships. To tell you that there are some do's and don'ts. When you lose your reputation, you're dead. Okay? As my mother would say, don't step over a $5 bill to pick up a nickel. Okay? Values, they are important. And you'll find that whatever you're chasing, I'm convinced if you live long enough, you'll catch up with it. And that's when you really got to be careful. Because you'll find that so many things are hollow. And the things that are really of value are those relationships, your reputation, the way you work together, and the need for mentoring others. And I must admit that there is a a sense of satisfaction that the dollar sign cannot provide when you reach out and feel that you're touching someone and passing it on, if you will. Tracy, what am I doing time-wise?
10 minutes.
Got 10 minutes. Well, I can go for about 30 more if you want me to. Okay.
You might want to touch on the politics.
Yes, that too. We live in a political world. You know, those are the facts. I worked on Capitol Hill for 3 years. And I went there as an engineer. I was going to straighten things out on Capitol Hill. So I saw all of that chaos theory on Capitol Hills. So I started taking notes and putting down processes and information flow. And I said, how can the place exist with no sharing of information, connectivity? So I asked Frank Bray if he would allow me to go in and see the senator. I worked for a senator from New Hampshire. And he set something up. So I had the presentation all pulled together and went in there and sat down. And just for the record, I was impressed with my presentation. Unfortunately, he was not. But as a matter of fact, he was almost going to sleep as I was. So in some part of an elevated voice, I said, in conclusion, and I said, sir, would you like to provide me some comments on my suggestion as to how we could improve the operation? So he thought for about 5 seconds. He said, yes, Marvin, I would like to pass on something to you. He said, what does what you have presented have to do with me getting reelected? I said, what? After all that good stuff that I just provided you, that's your comment? You must not be an engineer. I thought about that. Yeah. You know, I thought about that. From his vantage point, if he's not reelected, he's of no use to his constituents. Okay? So he's constantly running for re-election. So he's doing the things that are associated with political acceptability. Okay? And being technical is necessary, it's just not sufficient. Okay? I mentioned talking about the proposal evaluation process. Okay? I didn't want to call that politics when you've got these 3 proposals from 3 different companies that are basically equal. Okay? How do you go about making that decision? How would you go about making that decision? I'm just sitting here. And we've done all of the math, and they all add up to 20. They all add up to 30. But you've got to make a decision on one. Okay? Price has already been, it's a part of it. I've gone through all of the, I've done all the way down through price, if you will. Okay? Okay? Alrighty? Here's the thing about it. Then you start talking about price, and somebody talk about, well, your price, but then price realism. Okay? I look at the price, it's the lowest, but I know what I had in here, but okay. Then I throw this thing called price realism. It's kind of interesting. All right? And yes, you get some in there that are at the bottom. Can't do it. With proposals that are going in now for task orders, I've seen them where they have not evaluated the technical part. They only look at cost.